All right, we're back and holding on for dear life as we jump off into episode 7 of Willow.
Hit that intro.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody, if it's your first time joining us, welcome. We're two dads who love all things fandom, from Star Wars to Star Trek, Marvel to DC, and Middle-earth on down to Westeros. We love it all, and we want to bring all of our insights and love all things nerdy to you, our viewers. So if that's your cup of tea, then we're here for you, and you should definitely subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on all of our amazing reviews and insights that we bring to all of our favorite fandoms. So thanks for tuning in, guys. My name is Chris Matthews, and we launched a massive search, and thanks to the combined efforts of local and national agencies, guess what? We finally found him, guys. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show, Mr. Matt Parham. How you doing today, brother?
Not too bad. How are you?
So glad to have you back. Woo! So let's get into Willow, Chapter 7, titled Beyond the Shattered Sea, directed by Jamie Childs and written by Julia Cooperman, Bob Dolman, and Jonathan Kasdan.
Did you think that was Bob Dylan the first time you saw in the credits? Whenever we were watching the episode at the end, I was like, wait, what? No way. Yeah, okay.
Bob Dolman is actually the screenplay writer of the original movie of Willow. So
look at that.
And I think that's probably one of the reasons, one of the few reasons why I actually liked a little bit of this episode. Spoiler alert. So let's rock and roll into it. Once again, Rotten Tomatoes score for us. No critic consensus on that, but let's just dive into what these two dads think. So what did you think? And let's recap. Let's recap, too, since we missed out on your reviews for episodes 5 and 6. Real quick, what'd you think of those two episodes? And then take us on into 7.
I think it's a good idea because so episode 5 I thought was going along really well, and then out of the blue, absolutely everything changes. And I think sometimes that can be funny in a script, and that's probably what they were going for. But again, editing or something is always missing from these episodes where just as an audience, you're disoriented. Like, wait, what? What happened? Why are we now talking about a party and truth plums or whatever? And they're just like, okay, so I thought we were headed some. Not even like I don't mind being surprised by a plot, but I like for it to make some kind of sense as well. And I think that the latter half of episode 5 just threw too much of a twist in there for comedic value, and it didn't for me.
Didn't land.
Yeah.
And I got to ask you, because I didn't catch it in the episode. Did you see that Willow was taken by the trolls in there? Because I didn't see that in the episode. And I was surprised.
No, but there's a ton of stuff that we don't see in these episodes.
I know. Again, I think it was just...
I guess that's done. Yeah. It, like them getting out. How did Willow and Prince Graydon, how did they get out? Like Kevin Pollak drew him a map on a leaf. And I don't know how that led to them escaping, but we really didn't need an explanation after all, because suddenly they come upon this party and nobody cares. Yeah, and me
like,
and the
wow,
kids,
okay, cool.
Yeah, and my wife were sitting there like, wait, how did they just get out? What happened? But again, so it was a pretty disorienting episode. Episode 6. I really loved the trolls. I thought that was hilarious when they started.
My daughter loved. I thought that was hilarious too.
And I thought, oh man, they nailed that. This thing is sort of poking fun at a lot of cliches in fantasy fiction, and I thought that was perfect. These guys have a real, sort of regular tone to their voice, and they're very polite and also grotesque looking, but very orc looking. And anyway, so I liked that. I liked Christian Slater in the episode, but I didn't understand some of his characterization. Like if he was meant to be a redeemed thief or something, like whenever he was going after the vest, I'm trying to recall that episode, but when he was going after it, I thought, so are they making him evil now? Like, it seemed a very kind of weak plot point that he even said he was Mad Mardigan. And there was just some weirdness, throughout the episode with him. And I thought that was kind of just bad script writing. Like, it didn't make a lot of sense to me.
I don't know either. That's stupid. Yeah. Don't know. It was I hated that episode. So I hated both of those episodes.
The only reason I could see them doing it is if there was additional scenes that had something to do with that we just didn't get. And that's what I feel like a lot of this, there was probably other stuff that they were meant to be referring to or something going on. So getting the vest, I thought, man, this is a very interesting plot twist that they're about to go into, because you saw on the other side of that room, there's a circular door with a keyhole. I thought, oh my gosh, are they doing some kind of like portal here where they're going back to, that the other side of that door is actually the castle at Nockmar, where, he was trying to get into
Borman was trying to break into.
Trying to get in the other side. And like there's a interdimensional sort of time displacement thing going on. And I thought, wow, that'd be cool. But then we hear Val Kilmer's voice on the other side. So maybe there's something going on with that. But again, it was just confusing. Like most of this show, it's just been kind of confusing and off-putting.
Yeah.
So that was my take on episodes 5 and 6.
And for me, especially after watching this last episode, Chapter 7, I'm sitting here thinking, well, I look at this episode and I feel like it's structured in a way that's a little bit better than the rest of the series. And it's like, why did we have to focus on the rest of that other stuff? Why couldn't they have just cut that out and made this the central, part of it, or made this like 3 episodes, or made this into one extended movie where this was the meat of it? Because I was like, they're finally getting into stuff, they're finally training Elora Danan. They're finally building up their characters. They're finally building some actual tension between Kit and Elora and actual real stakes when it comes to their relationship and what they go through and real dynamics. I was like, man.
What I really think that the show has tried to do is expand the visual universe of Willow. Like we talked about in previous episodes, we've got that novel trilogy that expanded it. But the movie barely touched on any of the stuff that we're seeing. And so this show was meant to flesh out the rest of this world, give us a real sense of the different cultures and the different land areas, regions, and all that stuff. And we have. We've seen a lot of that, but it just doesn't. The plotting, the pacing, the editing, the script just has not been cohesive.
They just do a terrible job at explaining it and this stuff and just grounding us into this world. It's one thing to bring us from one place to the next, but when we have no idea what this place is or the lore or any of that stuff, and when they start to explain it, they cut you off, and so you don't get to hear the whole story. It's jarring, and you as an audience member can't figure out what's going on. So it's like, great, you took us into this world, guys. You showed us more of the Willow universe, but we don't know what the hell's going on, guys. So I don't think it worked.
It's a tough balancing act, because there's been other things that have come before this that have been on the lighter side, been a little bit more jovial, or whatever you want to call it, in their delivery of a fantasy fiction. But they hit the mark, and they made it work. And this just isn't. It's just not balancing it out right. I really think, to put a finger on it, it's the editing and the writing. But
absolutely. And in this episode, at the end of last episode, we got to see introduced to a new character, that Lily character from the Immemorial City. Right. So Ark meets her, and I got to say, throughout this episode, I'm just sitting there. I can tell right now that's the crone, obviously, right? Yeah. So. No doubt about it. From the get-go, it's like, oh yeah, she's really trying to corrupt this guy and everything. And so, I would have liked to see throughout the show kind of this build-up with Eric in Memorial City, so we had more of a stake with him. But they showed him here, and they showed him a little bit in a couple other episodes. But like, you were like, okay, he's out there somewhere, he's doing that thing. And so it relied heavily on this episode to build up that tension, and I really don't feel any stakes for that character, for him turning to the dark side or whatnot in the stakes that we're going to be seeing here. I did feel a little bit of compassion and a little bit of emotion between Laura and Kit. Like I was saying, they seem to have come to a good spot. They've reconciled, and they've built each other up right there at the end when they're at the waterfall. And I thought that was a very good scene. Like, out of all of this, I think that was probably the best part of this episode.
I actually liked a lot of this episode, and I felt like that particular moment was very earned, very well earned with everything that they've set up before. And not only that, I thought this is great because a lot of times in these movies or stories with a savior character, there's thousands of them, but a lot of times they aren't given enough time to really prove like why they're so savior-esque. Especially in a singular movie. It's always just, there's this one person out there the audience is meant to identify so that everybody feels like they are that special flower. But there's that one savior person usually prophesied about, blah, 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 blah. And at the end, the last like 10 to 15 minutes of the movie, they finally get it. And they finally save the world or whatever. But here, Alora comes to her own through the montage of finally training with Willow, but then really standing out and being the leader of this group as they get to the edge of the Shattered Sea. And then basically, it really reminded me a lot of Indiana Jones, The Last Crusade, where he takes that leap of faith. It reminded me of that scene, and I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to have to jump off. Yeah. And I loved that she knew she was going to do it. You could tell Alora's going to keep going on, but then Kit was saying, you know what? I'll follow you. After all this time, I've been the princess. I've had the princess complex. I've been jealous of you, but I'm finally relenting, and I'm not going to, follow my ancestors' footsteps, take the bad side. I'm with you. And, you think about those characters in that situation. Yeah, it's fictional, but I mean, they're just leaping to what they could presume easily as their death, and still those two ladies are in it together. I thought
they trust each other. Awesome. Yeah. One thing I really hated, though, about this episode, I got to say, is all of a sudden Graydon taking out his little flute and doing some magical stuff there with, I was like, oh, okay. It's like, okay, so he knows magic now. All of a sudden, like...
I think that they actually had alluded to that in past episodes.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, with him.
I mean, I know he's had a lot of knowledge, but I mean, it was just like, man, just seeing how hard it was for Laura Dannon to, practice magic and everything else. It just seemed like, oh, yeah. Well, wait, him too?
I kind of think there's going to be something to do with the fact that he's been possessed a couple of times, and maybe he'll end up being a bad guy or easily swayed to the dark side or something. But I did like that happened, and then like a couple scenes later, Willow says what the audience is thinking, like, where did that come from? And they kind of go into it a little bit. I liked the pacing of the episode. I really, really loved the cameo by Julian Glover. I mean, that guy is aces in my book.
The fisherman named Zeb.
Everything. A Bond villain. I just mentioned last
Game of Thrones. He was in that.
Game of Thrones. Yeah,
he was in Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade.
Always this villainous character, and I thought, oh man, they finally give him a role.
It truly is a cup of canes.
Yeah. He's just not a normal guy serving people like worm porridge or whatever that is. But
you eat what you eat out there in the sea. So
yeah, just like this kindly old fisherman type. And then,
Yeah.
of course, he's a villain in disguise. What I hated, though, is that cut from that to a chase where it's not just the one villain. We've got a guy on horseback all of a sudden. Like,
Yeah.
where did he come from?
great question. And so if you could just ride your horses out there, why didn't they just all get some horses and ride horses all the way out there on the Shattered Sea too?
Well, did nobody? I mean, they're in the middle of a giant mud puddle. Like, did nobody hear him coming up? I mean, I could see that Julian Glover's character is the shapeshifter, sure, but they could have stopped right there. They didn't have to include a second villain. There was just no reason for that. And she's a formidable one, so presumably you could have her flying up there as the evil eagle and taking on the group, because they can't do a ton about that, you know.
Except for Graydon.
Yeah,
with his flute, with his magical flute.
But another touch that I liked was the Mudmander, and the fact that he was named Ken.
Oh, so cute.
But it to me, I don't know if you got this, but it reminded me a lot of Neverending Story. I couldn't really tell if it was a practical effect or if that was just really good CGI.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it probably was a practical effect, especially the shots where he was with Graydon and everything, Kenneth and Graydon. And so I did appreciate that too. While I didn't appreciate the magical side of Graydon, I did appreciate the little relationship they had with Kenneth there. And again, you know, I wanted this whole section expanded out. Like, this should have been the meat of the show. Like, this could have been an awesome little movie with Willow and everything. And you could left out the wildlands and the trolls and the everything else that was there. And while you're at it, leave out the modern music too, which is...
I know.
Just doesn't work.
It's so disorienting, and to me, it seems like just a clear fan service push of the nostalgia and everything.
They're really trying to do something to bring in the next generation or something with all this modern music, though, in the show, because they're like, "Ooh, we need to make this kind of, you know, cool fucking hit for the kids. We can't make it exactly like the movie. Let's modernize it a little bit. Let's."
And that brings up a good point. And I actually thought about that kind of thing while watching this last episode and the sixth one, because there's so much of this drama going on, almost like this teen drama or
so much
YA
of that throughout the
drama.
Show.
Yeah. And it feels like maybe, I'm sorry to say it, man, but maybe we're just too old to really be the target audience for
Who is the target audience for this show, though? Like, this is getting like nobody is watching this damn show. Well, maybe there's a couple. You and I are watching it, but
but my daughter, my oldest daughter was crying during this last episode.
Oh wow!
At the Mudmander leaving. Which just on its own, I got to say,
he survived though. Kenneth is alive.
Yeah, he's alive. Yeah, she loved that. But, you know, them diving off the edge of the world there. So the Mudmander, I liked because, again, reminded me of Neverending Story, but it was also something that I don't think we've ever seen anything like this.
So that was a good little touch.
You know, like, this was a region. There's always like a forest land, a desert land, a mountainous, you know, cold environment. But I'd never seen this sort of thing, like a giant sort of salt flats just lightly flooded, and it's a little muddy, and having a creature like that can exist out there in this weird stagecoach looking thing. I thought all of that just unique and creative and wonderful.
It was.
You know, and so for me, a lot of the episode worked, and I thought it was the best one so far.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things is, like, my two favorite episodes were episode 2 and this one itself. Yeah. Both of those have something in common too. Those were both this one was partially written by Bob Dolman, but the second episode was also written by Bob Dolman. And again, I bring this up. He was the screenplay writer of the original movie. Yeah. Like, why didn't they have him just write the majority of this stuff? Because he gets it. He gets Willow. And you're right, like the landscape for this episode was awesome. Something I've never seen before. It was perfect. This is all we need. We've seen all the woods and the caves and all that other stuff in other fantasy. We've been there, done that. So this was something very unique to this show. And I absolutely love that as well.
And if you remember the original Willow, like there's so much of the film where the characters are filthy. I hate to say it.
True.
Like, Mad Mardigan sitting in that crow's pen forever. He's all gross and dirty. So they're always dirty in this franchise, which makes sense. They're like people roaming around the sticks. You're not going to have a whole lot of chance to take showers in that. But so it did remind me a lot of the original. It expanded well on the original. We got this cool ending scene, a lot of emotion, but it also introduced, again, this element of like a sort of interdimensional thing going on.
Yeah.
It reminded me a little bit of Lost, honestly,
good point.
Going into just a different environment. And I thought, wow, I'm really cool. I'm really excited to see what cool stuff happens next. This is the last episode. So I hope they stick the landing, but I don't know.
I do too. We'll see too, because how Kit like broke through the ground in the troll cave and whatnot, and then she almost reached out to Ark there. And I wonder if that's going to be their way out, like whenever they're leaving the immemorial city, if that's the way they're going to come. It's like they show up back in the troll cave, and it's like, oh crap, we got to get out of here now, or something like that. I don't know what they're going to do, but you're right. It did feel a little bit like Lost with that. There was a other dimensional type of thing going on there, and if you notice too, the color gradient definitely changes whenever they got out of the water too. So it is something like that.
I love really cool. that.
Me too.
I thought they're going to splash down and be at the bottom of a river. Well, people up at the top would know something's down there.
Yeah, they were like, oh, hey, look. Look at this big city down there. This abandoned city that's right there. You would be able to see that. So that would explain if it was like just a portal to another dimension instead of being just right there. But I got to say, another problem I'm totally having with this, I don't see why this series is called Willow, because he continues to just take a side step in this, and like it's like always he's a side character. He doesn't even get a spotlight most of the time in this. It really should have been the Elora Danan show. It's not the Willow show.
I mean, you have to tie into the original, so maybe you add a sub, what do they call a subtitle or something like that. Willow : the quest for Elora Danan to finally become confident in her abilities.
Right?
Stupid title, but
I think that the title should have just been "Don't worry about it," because that's what Willow says half the time, and that's basically what we have to do as an audience most of the time is just not worry about any. Graydon rising with his flute. Whoa! Don't read too much into that. But yeah, it really does, and I love Warwick Davis, but I feel like he's just. His character is he's the Last Jedi Luke Skywalker, guys, of the new Willow series. He really is, doesn't want to do anything. And he wants to go back home now. He had that vision of Mimsy, and he thinks that there's something bad. And they kind of like offhandedly, I don't know if you caught it, offhandedly explained that like his son died too. And like, because he was off on an adventure and he came back and his son died or went away. So it was just real quick and you miss it. But they kind of explain that, and I think that's all we're gonna get with that. So
I think it is. I think the same thing with his wife. And we have needed that explanation.
Right. I was like, I thought this was gonna be a big plot point of this show, but it ends up not being that way. And he's just like, Mimsy's all I got. And I'm like, okay, all right, well, I guess that's all we get.
They've been mentioning like she's coming back, and I mean we got one more episode, so
we do.
We'll see. And I'm also thinking, just throwing it out there, that we will not get a final end to the story. That with the visions that he's had.
Oh,
we
yeah.
we have
Nowhere
zero
close.
setup.
Yeah.
For whatever that was, an epic, huge, giant battle. There's no army anywhere.
Right. Jonathan Kasdan really was trying to set up multiple seasons here. And I did hear that he was trying to get another season greenlit with this show. But I don't think they got a hell's chance in getting a second season.
Way. I mean, yeah.
No
Snowball's
way.
chance.
Yeah, snowball's chance in hell. Sorry, Jonathan Kasdan. I don't think it's happening, brother.
There's too many technical issues. You know?
Too many guys.
Too many. For even a young audience to notice,
Mm-hmm.
there's just no way.
For sure. You know, my daughter's even noticing all the issues. So, with that said, guys, I do want to bring in a guest to the show here on Fatherly Fandom. So we're going to bring in a little insight from my daughter here. She's not going to be shown on screen, but she will give you some of her thoughts on this episode and Willow in general. So go right ahead. Let me know what you think.
It's losing me.
It's losing you. Why is Willow losing you? Speaking to the microphone.
Because
Graydon?
just got his magical flute.
Same
One
with me.
thing.
I agree. Yeah.
There's too many cuts. And at the end of the newest episode, how what's his name? Eric just magically appears in this person who's
at the end
turns into this whole different person.
Yeah.
Why didn't they show us like
he
how
got his haircut in a city with
and what happened to the girl?
People.
What?
Yeah, where's the girl? Do you think the girl's a crone?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
She even said, "I was the one who brought you there."
Oh, she did. Good point. She
She's
did
like-
say that.
She's like,
She's catching more of this than I am.
I was the one who brought you here, and then he came in to go get some water, but he couldn't move, and then the girl was like giving her a cup of water and like, I'll give you this if you do whatever I want.
And she gave him a shave and a haircut.
Yeah.
And she kissed him for no reason.
She gave him totally different clothing.
Yeah, I know. Spruced him up.
Yeah, where's her wardrobe?
He looks horrible.
He looks horrible. Okay.
He's not himself.
So what do you think is going to happen in the final episode? What are your predictions?
They're all gonna die.
Oh, jeez. Oh, boy. So nobody's going to make it out? You don't think Laura Dannon is going to save the day and Willow's going to be back with Mimsy or anything?
No, Willow is going to give up.
He already has.
Die.
Oh, no. That's really sad.
And then Allura will save, but
Okay.
everybody else will be gone.
Fair point. So let's go ahead and go into our ratings, and I'll have you start first. My daughter's going to start first with her rating of Chapter 7 of Willow. So what would you
5
rate
out
this?
of 10.
5 out of 10. Okay. Thanks, baby girl. You did awesome. Thanks for the input. You're the best. And let's go over to you, Matt. What do you rate this episode of Willow?
How to follow that scathing review.
Man, she is better at this than me.
Yeah. Yep. Doing a lot of mudslinging at the Mudmander.
Yeah.
I am going to actually rate this episode pretty high because, like I said, my favorite of the series. There was some editing missteps as usual, so I didn't find it to be all that distracting, though. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Whoa, 9 out of 10 for Matt here, guys. Okay,
I thought they hit the mark.
Awesome. So, I'm not going to be as generous as Matt, but I'm not going to be as harsh as my daughter on this. I did enjoy some aspects of this one, but altogether, there's just too many editing mistakes, too many things like that I'm just, and really throughout the season, it has been losing me as it goes along. So really, it's hard to leave all of that, all the rest of the series behind and just focus on this one in itself. but I'm going to try the best I can, and I'm going to say 7 out of 10, a solid 7 out of 10 for this episode. And my daughter says boo. So 5 out of 10 for my daughter, 9 out of 10 for Matt, and 7 out of 10 for me. We got one more episode left. We'll do that next week. Great having you back, Matt. It was really hard to
Great to be back.
review this show by myself. Got some great content coming out. I've been reviewing Bad Batch. Episodes 1 and 2 came out on Wednesday, so I'll be reviewing that every Wednesday. Got a really fun video coming out on Monday, so you guys need to check that out. And so thanks for joining us, guys. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Simply search for Fatherly Fandom. We're also a podcast too, so you can look at all the different podcast platforms. Just search for Fatherly Fandom. You'll find us. So as always, guys, from our families to yours,
Have a good one.